and welcome back to Unpopular People.
We believe that listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success.
Today in our interview, Roger and Serena from Canada.
Roger and Serena are a very inspiring couple that got married quite early in their life.
Serena is originally from Italy and Roger from Canada.
She moved with her whole family to Canada when she was 16 years old, and now she is a doctor in Sociology.
Roger went to university too, and he worked for quite a long time as a salesperson in a software company.
They also spent some time in Heidelberg. That's how we got to know them.
If you want to find out more about Unpopular People and our project, visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com.
There you can also find the services for our one-on-one sessions, which are affordable and fair. And you can also find the donate button if you want to support us.
For questions, please send us a message. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
You can also support us by subscribing to our podcast and subscribing to our newsletter. Thank you very much.
And now, have fun with this interview.
All right, my dear friends, thank you very much for taking this time today to have a little interview with us. I wanted to have you on our podcast since we started, to be honest. Like when I thought about this whole project, and I thought about people that should be on the show. Let's call it our show. I thought about you. There were some people in my head, but you were definitely one of them. So I'm very happy that you're here today and that you take the time for us, because I know you're really busy, and so yeah, that's very cool. Thank you so much for so far. So let's start with our first question, so the people get to know you a little bit, maybe about your background. So let us know. You can start, whoever wants to start. Let us know, where were you born and how did you grow up?
Okay, you want me to go first? All right. So I was born in Italy, in a city called Genova, and I grew up basically in the outskirts of Milan. And then there was a big break in my life because my dad actually had an opportunity to work abroad. So when I was 16, we moved to Canada. And we moved to Ottawa first, where I was hanging out with a bunch of other Italian families, and my dad was working for the Canadian government in collaboration with another company. And eventually I went to university, which is where I met this guy. So I was going to pass.
Yeah, so I was born on a rock in the middle of the Atlantic, Newfoundland, and in a small town called Stephenville that was previously a U.S. Air Force base, and during the Cold War. So it was kind of an interesting town because it really only had one industry, pulp and paper, which since has closed. So from the town that I remember that was pretty vibrant when I was growing up in a small town, it's now even maybe half the size because a lot of people moved away, including me. So I grew up there. It was quite interesting. I went to the school that was quite religious, which was only about 400 meters down the street from my house, because my parents wanted me to be quite close, because my mom has been in a wheelchair since I was about 5 years old. So she was about 26, 27. But my early years, I remember sort of her having trouble walking and falling a little bit. And that was something that really kind of changed me when I was young. I was very responsible, extremely responsible when I was young, because I had to help take care of my mom from the age of 5 or 6. So that was an interesting way to grow up. But I don't think, we weren't rich. My dad worked for the telephone company, and that gave us a certain comfort level for finances, but we definitely weren't rich. And I did fairly well at school, so I had an opportunity through scholarships to go to a university. I had a few different options, but I ended up following a friend of mine who went to Ottawa the year before, and I went to Carleton University, and that's where I met Serena.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of a synopsis of our early life.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And hello from my side as well for all the listeners. Both stories, both childhoods, very interesting, I think. But first I want to ask you, Serena, how was it moving with 16 years old from Italy to Canada? How did you feel? How was it for you to start completely new when you were a teenager?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Thanks for asking it. It was such an interesting process because my dad had promised us to move to Canada a bit earlier when I was 14, but then that trip fell apart. So I had the opportunity to think about what my life would be like in Canada. And of course, as a teenager, I had made this massive dream in my head. I thought it was going to be like the coolest thing, like cowboys and loggers and like great nature and all those amazing sparkling cities, and it was going to be awesome and the coolest people that I was going to meet. It was going to be super vibrant and exciting. And then we actually moved, and we moved to Ottawa, which is a very small city, and it's a government town, so it's very boring.
Or it was then, at least, yeah.
Well, it's not as much anymore, but at the time it was very quiet and very small. So I was used to living in Milan with a bunch of crowds, a lot of people, and a lot of friends. And all of a sudden, I found myself at 16 in a country where I didn't understand the language. That was kind of like dispersed, not a lot of people, in a high school that I didn't understand. And it was really overwhelming. So it was a tough first year. And the other strange thing was also that my dad was there with a bunch of other colleagues. So every colleague of his brought his family. So there were a bunch of Italian teenagers. They didn't really like each other, but they were forced to be with one another. We didn't really have any alternatives. So the first year was really not what I expected and a little boring, and we couldn't do anything because in Canada, you can't go to bars until you're of major age. So you need to be 19.
19.
So
18 if you cross the river in Ottawa.
So I had just left Italy where I could go to discos, I could go to bars, I could meet guys, I could do anything I wanted. And all of a sudden, life got really boring.
Well, a lot of times, somewhat like COVID-19 in your parents' apartment. So
there was a lot of that. So the first year was hard, also because I couldn't speak any English. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be.
There's a great story about how she spoke English for the first time in a class.
Yeah, that was funny.
Tell us the story.
The story basically is that if you're an immigrant person in a new country, people associate the ability to speak with intelligence. So I had gotten to a point where I could understand perfectly, but I didn't really have the courage to speak yet. And we were doing group work that was forced upon us. A professor put us in this group and was telling us to do an analysis of Shakespearean plays. I think we were analyzing the mousetrap. You know that metaphor? Anyways, yeah. So one kid was being very kind and he was taking the time to slowly explain to me what we were supposed to be doing. And I was listening. And then this other guy intervened and basically told him to stop talking to me because I was stupid. Because there was no point, really. It was just a waste of time. So I got pissed off and I started speaking English. It was great.
Okay. And she didn't speak like 3 words. She spoke like paragraph after paragraph.
I just looked at him and I said, do you think that just because I don't speak your language, I'm stupid? That's a bit of a stretch, don't you think? And he was like, oh my gosh, speak. Yes, and that was a good moment because after that, I kind of forced myself to kind of get over being shy and I tried to speak a bit more.
Yeah, and you got to meet guys a little bit.
Yeah, that was a bit easier too.
So before we get to the meeting guys thing, I wanted to ask you, Serena, do you have any siblings and how did they react to the change in their life?
Yes, so I have a sister. We are very close in age. She's a year and a half older than me. Her name is Pier Luisa. And same thing, right? We got to Canada and she was just as bored as I was. And we had each other though. And because we were so close, that really helped. We were just, each other's ally. So that was great. And you'll see that my sister
she has a kind of
an interesting
important
part
role
of the story later. We talk about how Roger and I met.
Okay.
That's why I asked.
Maybe Eliza, you should ask Roger how we met.
Yeah, but first I want to know a little bit more about Roger's childhood. You said it was like a responsibility for you because of your mom in the wheelchair. And do you have brothers or sisters? And how do you describe can you describe the responsibility? So how was the life back then? How did the day look like?
Sure, yeah. No, I was an only child. My parents were actually, it was a bit dangerous for my mom was diagnosed when she was about 13, 14 with, actually this has a Heidelberg tie-in, with Friedrich's ataxia. And Friedrich's ataxia is named for a Dr. Friedrich, who was at the University of Heidelberg, Heidelberg Universitat. And so it was sort of like multiple sclerosis or other different neurological diseases. So she was losing motor control and her balance. So I had a really good childhood. I mean, my mom was extremely loving, and because she couldn't get out of the house so much, she was I was a big part of her world. But I actually had two moms almost, because her mom, my grandmother, was really took a lot of opportunity to help my mom with raising me and take some of the pressures off of my mom and dad, because my dad was working and traveling a lot with the telephone company. So my grandparents ended up probably doing at least a third of my upbringing as well. And so I was very close to my grandmother especially, and later on to my grandfather as well. So that was a big part of my early years. My grandmother always as well spoiled me a little bit, so I was a bit of a chubby kid. She would always hide chocolates, and my dad and her would have these fights around. There was a drawer in our basement in their little apartment where she would always put chocolates for me, and I was getting fat. So when I was about 12 years old, my dad said, "Listen, you have to. I don't care what it is, but you have to do some sport." So I went into judo. He took me, and I started judo, and then I actually went to judo for a number of years and competed. And when I was 16, I placed third in Canada for the Canada Games for one of the weight classes for judo. So it got me in a lot better shape. The irony was, in order for me to fight, I was fighting in a weight class that was heavier than I was used to. So for the 3 months leading up to the Canada Games, I couldn't eat regular food. I had to eat ice cream and everything to try to gain. So my grandmother was kind of right.
Poor guy having to eat ice cream all the time.
Yeah, it's a tough life. Tough life.
It's very interesting, yeah, because you both have like different struggles in the background. Like I think for Serena, more like the finding your identity to this new place and like getting settled in a new environment and everything. And for you, Roger, like the like being the only child and kind of feeling this responsibility for your mom. So I want to start with you, Serena, first, just to switch back and forth. So what advice could you give others maybe that are struggling with something similar? You know, they come to a new place, and we heard this before with people that came from South Africa to New Zealand or something like this, and they had troubles finding their identity. So what advice could you give others to, especially in this age?
Well, that's a really complicated and layered question. I mean, I think one of the things about identity is that I think we stress a bit too much about who we are and who we want to be. And I think at the end of the day, life happens to us. And I think who you become is a process that is active and passive. So I think the first piece of advice would be to be courageous and not be afraid of doing things that terrify you. So moving to a new country, if you have an opportunity, do that, because it's probably going to be, for the rest of my days, the best experience I've ever had.
Yeah,
for sure.
Me too, when I moved to Germany.
Yeah.
So we both got to experience it a little bit. Yeah.
And the other thing is that not to stress too much about who you are, because it doesn't stay like that. Your life changes, and who you are constantly changes with you. So you may not necessarily love what you are at that moment, but don't worry, because just 6 months down the line, you're going to be a completely different person. Yeah. So take it as it comes. Think of it as a river. Yeah, I think that would probably be a good piece of advice. If I could give that piece of advice to me at 16, to stress a little less about what other people think and to try to always do the things that I think others expect of me, I would like to be able to give myself that advice. Yeah, so travel and don't stress about who you are. Yeah.
What about you, Roger? What advice can you give in the age from your background?
Yeah, I think I kind of took my own advice, but it took me a long time. Like I said, I was quite responsible. I actually enjoyed my childhood and wouldn't change really a thing, even though there were those kind of special challenges with my mom. Because then when I went away, I ended up being quite a good student, quite a good kid, and for a long time, all through high school and things like that, when other people were smoking pot, I was like, oh no, that's wrong, and things like that. And so, yeah. So at that point, I was very good, but that actually did put me into a good stead when I started working. I got a lot of really good experience and a lot of really good opportunities, especially after I went to work for a software firm. And that was still in my late 20s. And I got to be a country manager with them because I had gray hair and I seemed older by the time I was like 28, 29. So it really gave me a lot of opportunity that way. But eventually I felt like I had too much responsibility, right? I had taken on so much. And when we moved from Canada to Germany, I insisted on selling everything. We had a house in Canada, and I really felt like we needed to divest ourselves of all these responsibilities, like mortgages and things like that. And we went and we did the 2 years in Heidelberg, really by renting and having much less responsibility. And it really kind of got that out of our system. Because I think if you go too far one way with the responsibility or too far with no responsibility, you always try to come back into equilibrium on those things. But until you have the other, you don't know that where the middle is. I think you need to have a little bit of fun in your life to balance off the responsibility. Yeah. So
great. Yeah, very great advice. Thank you very much for this, both of you, of course. And so, okay, now we finally want to meet. We're nearly there. You came to Canada. You already were there. So when did you guys meet? And how?
Okay, so this is a cool story. Yeah. So Roger's dad came to visit him in Ottawa, and Roger was a student, but he didn't have a job. So he encouraged him to find a part-time job as he was still a student.
He ripped a number off and he said, if you haven't called them and you don't have an interview by next week, I'm cutting you off, basically.
Wow. That can be a little stern sometimes. Yeah. So anyways, and the same thing happened to me and my sister. So my sister was walking around campus and found exactly the same poster with the phone number saying, job for students. Give us a call. And so she got the number, and then she said, hey, apparently they're hiring a bunch of people, so you can be hired too. So my sister and I applied, and Roger applied to the same job. And you probably know about this. Every university has students that call people that have graduated, the alumni, and they ask for donations of money to raise the budget of the university. Right. So that was the job we had. Yeah. We were telemarketers.
It's a very North American thing.
It's a very North American thing.
Where you call for donations.
Yeah, so universities are always private, so they always ask for private money. And we were those poor bastards that had to call these people and say, hi, we're calling from Carleton University.
Would you like to donate to build this building?
So we can build a new building. It was not a good job.
Not a thankful job.
Yeah.
Not a good job. But, we had a good time.
It was my first sales job.
That's true. And so Roger, here's where it gets really fun and interesting.
Yes.
Roger was actually interested in my sister. He wanted to date my sister, Pier Luisa. So he decided to talk to the other sister. Now, you need to understand that I was very skinny at the time, and I was a goth. So I was all like black hair, piercings, black.
She maybe weighed about 45 kilos, maybe.
Yeah, I was really tiny.
She was really tiny.
And my sister was a voluptuous Italian with the long brown hair and, gorgeous and a little bit more outgoing at the time. Well, I don't know about that.
Not more
outgoing. She had, let's just call them more attributes.
Yeah, she was shapely, let's say.
Shapely. So when Roger befriended me, was actually because he was trying to figure out if he could be with her.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, my sister had a boyfriend at the time, so after a few months,
but we were being friends. We would meet before our shifts in a little cafeteria right in the building that we were working in. But we would religiously meet about an hour before, 2 hours before.
Yeah.
And so our friendship really developed over September, and we didn't date until December.
Right.
So
it took a while.
It gave us
first because I wasn't really sure if he was interested. Right?
And she thought I was too slow.
And the other thing is that poor thing. It was okay. Italians have a completely different rhythm when it comes to meeting people, right? They're very friendly. They're very in your face. They can look at you and know if you're interested, and there's all this signaling that happens if you're interested in a person. So at 16, before, like 2 years earlier, I had game immediately. I knew exactly what to do. And then I came to Canada, and all my signals were completely off.
Canadians were much more polite and slow.
I found Canadians to be very introverted, very quiet, very calm, not exactly outgoing. I mean, it's a completely different culture. So, I mean, I felt I was completely out of my depth, right? So I also had become very insecure, and I didn't really know how to approach guys because I figured I had fallen on my face a few times. So it had gotten a little complicated. So with him, I was taking my time because I didn't want to scare him off.
Right. But she was getting a little bit impatient by December as well.
Yeah, by December, I was like, I don't think this guy likes me. I mean, it's been 3 months, for the love of God.
Yeah.
But finally, how did it happen? We organized a party together, remember?
Yeah.
And after that party, you said, let's go out for a movie, right? And I was like, is this a date? Is it not a date? I'm not sure. And then it was a date.
Yeah. And it'll be 30 years ago in a few months in this year. In December of this year will be 30 years since we started dating.
Right. So we were really young. I was 18 and he was 19.
Yeah.
So,
wow. Yeah. It's a very long time. So amazing. When you see couples like you that are for so long time together and everything seems very well. And do you have a secret that you can do an advice for people? How can you handle to be together for so long time a good relationship?
Well, I think the key is
where does she hide the chocolate?
Yeah. There's the key is it sounds trite a little bit, but it's communication, right? It's trust and communication, and no matter what it is that you have in your life, whether or not it's the way you want to live your relationship, the decision if you want to have children. We don't have children. Mm-hmm. The way the finances run, keeping everything completely open. Like right from the first day, and it was partially because that's the way my parents had done it, but right from the first day we were married, we had one bank account. We never have had any separate bank account.
Yeah, that was usually, we had like $3.
We only had debt anyway, so we were signing on.
We didn't have anything, so it was easy.
But yeah, when we got married, we tried to set ourselves up, part of that responsible side that I was talking about before. We didn't even ask for any gifts. We just said, could we get money because we want to buy our first house? And we bought our first house. We were
21 and 22?
22 and 23.
Right.
And we bought our first house. It was a beautiful, we love it. Even in memory, we love it.
It's such a
It
cool
was
place.
a 2-bedroom apartment. It had been repossessed by the bank, and the guy who had been repossessed, we found out through the other neighbors, had been arrested for flying a plane from Mexico with drugs into the U.S., I think. And,
What? Okay.
and on our back door, his name was Charles, and on the back door there was scratched into the door when we bought it was Chaz, which is a way to say Charles in short. Call me. And with somebody's keys. So it was, that was interesting as well.
Crazy.
But yeah, I digress a little bit with the story, but it's really about all of those things that you do them together, you do them as a team.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is that we met each other when we were so young.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, you grow together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you really become intertwined. And this can play out well or it can play out badly. In our case, I think we were good friends and we've always been good friends.
I think we zigged and zagged a lot, but we kind of, I guess through the communication, also through the way we wanted to live our lives, we zigged and zagged together, sort of thing. So we could have zigged and zagged at the same time and gone apart like this.
That's true.
And we had problems.
We've had some serious issues too.
Yeah.
Like life has not always been, a bed of roses. We've had some serious issues, and we had to go through some.
We did.
nasty
Yeah, I
things.
mean, we had some tough times in our marriage, and got help from great people that really helped us out through those times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting, really inspiring. So, how do you react to people, especially because we try to live the same lifestyle? We are friends, and we have a bank account since
Nearly everything.
we do everything together, and also when we go somewhere, and for us it's just like we don't. Like when we want to go somewhere and we both like the place where we want to go, like it's for us, of course, we go there together, right? But sometimes we get like we hear people like, oh no, but I just want to do something with you. I just want to do something with you, and people reject you because of this. Like how did you react to like things like this, or how do you react to those people?
Yeah, it's a fine line between codependence and a strong friendship relationship. I mean, I think fundamentally, every time you have someone that has a problem with you being good together and want to pull you apart from one another, you should see that as a red flag. Nothing ever good comes of that, in my opinion. This is also my professional opinion, because now I'm an expert in relationship dynamics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with being each other's best friends. I think it becomes problematic if you just cannot do anything without the other. So you need to watch out for still maintaining your own personalities and maintaining your own interests and making sure that you have a life together but a separate life too. And I think we've done that quite well, because we have very disparate interests, and he likes to do certain things I don't,
Certainly.
and vice versa. And that's okay.
I also think it's been interesting, but we maybe with the exception of the time we were in Heidelberg, have sort of been social conveners where people can't come to our house. And one of the things that some groups of friends, especially in North America, I think more have done is there's the boys get together and the girls get together, sort of thing. In Italy,
That's what my
there's a
question
little-
was related to, because we experienced the same.
Yeah, I really don't like that. It's
So in Italy, she would always talk about the company. So maybe you can explain.
Well, I mean, keep in mind also that my impression of Italy is a very young person.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure if this is still the case with people becoming older. But the way I remember it is that there's a lot more gender integration. There isn't this idea that boys have to hang out with themselves and girls hang out with themselves. It's always friends that hang out together in mixed company. So I think that's part of my heritage, and that's something that for me works a lot better, right? Yeah.
So when she moved back to Italy, I went to visit her, and there's another story that comes out of that. But the company, the group that she was with, was really this group of all these guys and girls who weren't all dating each other then,
just friends.
but they had probably dated each other at different points in the group. Whereas but in North America, there's, especially as we've gotten older, there's still this kind of sense that the guys get together a little bit and the girls get together. But I don't know, we've been able to sort of bring a lot of that, bring groups together, and I think people really enjoy being in a mixed group.
I agree.
But they sometimes have to be convinced, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you end up the guys going to a hockey game or something like that. And I never really got into any of those types of all guy things. Now, we both like a guy's trip or a girl's trip.
Now you play poker with me.
And I have a group that plays poker, and we're all guys. So it is nice to have that every once in a while, but not be the norm, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Now I want to do a little bit structure because you bought a house together in Canada, and then Serena, you went back to Italy for a job. And can you tell us from this time a little bit that we understand the history things like?
I know it gets really complicated because Roger and I met in 1990. But then my dad's contract ran out 2 years later. So my parents loved Roger, but they didn't like the idea of leaving a daughter back in Canada. So they decided that we were all going to return to Italy. So they basically deported me back to Italy for 1 year.
How old have you been then?
20. I was 20.
Yeah.
Right? So, I didn't really I wasn't even of major age. So by law in Italy, you cannot be of major age till 21. So if my parents forced me to go to Italy, I had to. I couldn't really say no. But I got really sneaky because my mom basically figured that I was young and therefore I was going to forget about Roger within 3 months. So I made them promise me that if we were still together in a year and if I wanted to go back to Canada on my own, that it was going to be okay. Now, legally speaking, they had no right to keep me in Italy if they wanted to, but let's just say we negotiated this friendly amendment.
Family thing, family business.
Yeah.
I'm very stubborn. So my mom figured that she was going to be able to change my mind, but it didn't work out.
So
at the end of the year,
at the end of maybe 9 months
that we've been apart, Roger came to visit in Italy, and that fall I moved back to Canada. And I finished university, and then we got engaged shortly after.
You're leaving out something.
Okay, fine. You want to go there?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, sure.
So
it gets a little complicated. Oh my God. Okay, then you realize it opens the other can of worms. So you sure you want to go there?
Well, no, I guess. It doesn't really, though. No.
Okay,
anyway.
Sure. So there was a beach shark issue.
Well, not only that, but
Roger came
What kind of issue? What kind of issue? Sorry.
It's called the beach shark, a very good-looking man at the beach. It's coming. So, which then kind of takes our life in an interesting direction. So this is an important story. Okay, so Roger came to visit for about a month, and we fought like cats and dogs because we hadn't seen each other for 9 months, right? Mm-hmm. So he went back to Canada, and I stayed in Italy for 2 more months, and in that 2 months, I went to the seaside for a vacation, where I met this really good-looking guy, and he was like, well, if you're still in love with him, how come you're interested in me? And I was like, shit, you have a point. So we didn't really do much, like we just had a little fling. It wasn't even that serious. But it was enough for me to really worry that maybe what I'd done with Roger wasn't such a good idea.
And I hadn't exactly been a choir boy back in Canada either. There was a girl that I had gone to my kind of graduation from the university with, and we had kind of made out as well. So I wasn't completely blameless in this whole process.
No, fair enough. But I mean, come on, we were like 20,
we were young,
21.
right? So.
What do you expect? Yeah. We were about to make this massive life decision, and we had to convince both our families that this was going to be the best decision. And at that age, it was really hard to do. So it's not a surprise.
So she moved back to Canada after being at the seaside, running all the time, trying to impress the beach shark. And
I wasn't running for the beach shark. I was running for the angst.
Okay, whatever. But she got off the plane and she came out through the exit. And I was picking her up, and I just about fell over because she was so beautiful.
I was tanned.
She had such a beautiful tan.
And angry.
But she was mad, and she proceeded to
So I got there and I immediately broke up with Roger. He was like, forget it, this is not going to work. I'll finish my university and then I'll go back. But it didn't work out that way.
I am not a runner, but I decided in the little short shorts that she was wearing to run that I would go running with her. And I did everything. This is after we broke up. And maybe we were also still having sex after we broke up.
Yeah, there was a lot of really good, we're not together.
Sex. And so then we ended up with me chasing her for about 10 days, 12 days.
It didn't take very long.
And I convinced her to take me.
But then, of course, the situation was reversed, so that he was angry at me and he didn't want me back.
Yeah.
So he made me work.
A little bit, yes. Oh, well. Anyway, but it all worked out.
Oh my God, it was such a long time ago.
So you both worked a lot for your relationship. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you were saying earlier. So it's all about communication, and even if there are things coming up that you don't see happening in the future, because there's always, you never know what happens tomorrow. Like if you look back 3 months ago, we're recording this right now while we are all in quarantine, and life can change. And I think it's very important what you did to just like talk about it, and being mad at each other, it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you find a solution. And if you think like you want to spend time together or spend your life together, I think it's very, very cool what you did. I
was talking to a friend earlier today who had gone through a separation, divorce, and I was saying, we're not making a big deal of it, but we are finding that being in quarantine and being isolated like this, it's actually pretty okay, because we're each other's best friends. So it's not like couples who have been apart and doing their things with their other friends and now all of a sudden have to spend time together, which is happening maybe for some people. We're not finding that at all.
It's hard, for sure.
We still fight, but
I know, but I think it's a good thing. For the record, I think fighting is very important.
Yeah.
Because people that say that they are great because they never fight, I mean, I think that's a very bad habit.
Yeah.
It just bottles things up, and it's not really going to be, tenable in the long run.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And it's also what you said is, I think when you are in a relationship and you should actually think about a time like, when you're stuck. I'm quoting here now with my fingers. When you're stuck in a place for a little while or a longer time, and could you spend all the time with like this one person? And if you see this is not happening, then you should probably consider the whole thing. And it's also okay, because there's if one door closes, there's like a lot of doors open. So so this is very cool. Anyways, I'm drifting away. So I want to find out a little bit more about your education and your profession. You said that you went to university, Roger, and you, Serena, as well. So, what did you study, and what is your profession? What came out of your studies?
Sure. I went to university to actually do an undergraduate degree and then become a lawyer. So I decided to do a business degree, Bachelor of Commerce, and I specialized in accounting. And so by about the end of the third year, I was okay at accounting, not fantastic, and it wasn't something I loved, but they started doing the interviews in the fourth year for jobs, and I got one of the jobs at one of the big accounting firms. So that gave me an opportunity to make some money, and I also didn't know if I really wanted to still be a lawyer, so I decided to go and try accounting, and I could always go back to school later if I wanted to. So I did. I worked for accounting firms for about 5 years. I got laid off from one when there was a downturn in the economy, like we're seeing now. Back in, I guess it was back in 94, 95 sort of thing. And we, at that time, I bounced around a bit, and then I got a job with the government, and I was still working. I was working for the head accountant, the controller for the Canadian Army. And I was using a piece of software, and I got to meet some of the salespeople for that, and that company ended up hiring me, and that really changed my life, because going into high tech and going into sales, I was much better at sales than I had been at accounting. I'm more of an extrovert, so it made it a good career change for me. So I started there 21 years ago, and they just gave me a package. I'm calling it my retirement package right now, but I'm only 49, so I'll probably do something else. I just don't know what that is. But for now, I have some money to give me an opportunity to really comfortably look at what I do next as well. So
my story is very kind of non-linear. So I used to joke when Ben met me, he would ask me, "So what do you do?" And I was like, "I'm a professional student." Because I started in university, I did a degree in political science.
Eventually.
Yeah, I changed the major I think 4 times. I think it was undeclared, then Spanish, then
mass
communications, then finally political science. So I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
In our last year, she did extremely well on her thesis in political science.
And then while at university, this person who was Italian, and he had basically made a career of being Italian. So he did a degree in comparative literary studies, and then he became a language professor in Italian. And I was like, hey, that's a good idea. I could probably do something like that. So I enrolled in my master's in comparative literary studies, and then I was continuing into a PhD, but then my program closed. They actually shut it down. So I had to transition to another program, and I kind of followed the footsteps of a friend who transitioned to sociology.
Very good friend. Yeah.
And I mean, political science and sociology are fairly similar, and I really was missing political science. So I decided to do that, and I ended up doing a doctorate in sociology.
Yeah, but it got kind of elongated by our trip to Germany.
In the middle of my PhD, we went to Germany for 2 years, and I didn't do much studying at that time. But
took her a couple of years longer because of that.
But we went back to Toronto, and then I finished my PhD. I worked as a sessional lecturer for a couple of years. And then I got an interview here at Brandon University in this town where we live now, and I got the job.
Yeah.
So now I'm a professor in sociology, and I've been so for 10 years.
And it's crazy because I was just saying I was at this company for almost 21 years. Half of that time we've lived in this town, Brandon, Manitoba, which is about 60,000 people, so quite small.
Ben has seen it.
Yeah, Ben knows it. And
I was there. Yeah, it's actually quite nice.
But we moved from Ottawa, which was already what we said was a small town, but it's 1 million people. Yeah. And then Heidelberg, which is a very global city as well. And then to Toronto.
Which was amazing.
Yeah, really world-class city. To Brandon, which we weren't quite sure about, but we've now lived here 10 years and are really, really happy.
Yeah. So, I mean, my life has been a series of fortunate mistakes that somehow panned out. I mean, I don't have anyone in my family that is an academic. I'm the only academic in my family. But I love it. It's a great job.
You have an uncle through marriage who's an academic. But
he's a historian,
But I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but we always seem to fall upwards. We've been very lucky. And we often talk about this from the point of view, her a sociologist especially, as it's as much about being lucky and being in the right places at the right time. Like that software company, just because I ended up taking a job in the government because I didn't want to be in a typical accounting firm for a while. Then I started using the software, and then I got offered this job really financially projected us forward. And with Serena, I mean, it's been all these things like the program closing and then going into sociology, and that ended up being her calling. So every change, and like I said, I just went through being let go by my company. Every change is an opportunity. It's one door closes, another opens, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in one way or another, it's interesting. I find that it really does turn into something that maybe in the moment is terrifying and you don't like it. But a few years down the line, when you look back, you realize that it really was an important moment that opened a lot of opportunities. And it was very much an opportunity to do something else, right? And to think of yourself in new ways. So, change sometimes is terrifying, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Great, amazing. Now we want to hear a little bit from your time in Heidelberg. So you mentioned it already as in this interview for several times. So how was the time there?
Oh, it was amazing. Okay, so for me, it was a very amazing time and a very scary time. It was amazing because I think Roger mentioned earlier, it got us to do something that was very not what we were used to. We met a bunch of really interesting people that were very into the techno scene, and there was a bit of a subculture around us, right? Like Ben. Exactly. So we lived this blessed life. It was kind of magical, where we knew the DJs, and they would invite us to these private parties, or we would end up on the lists, and we would go to where all the cool things were happening. It was almost surreal, right? This was not the life we had before. We really felt we'd become rock stars. It was a really interesting time. Now, the flip side of that is that I was supposed to be writing my dissertation, and I wasn't being a very good student. So I got so far away from my academic career that I almost got kicked out of my program. So it got very close. I could have burned my academic career because of the fact I was not doing enough work.
And eventually that was the main reason we left Heidelberg, because we had, I think in our minds, had the idea that we may stay for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And by the end of 2 years, it was getting hard.
I knew I was not going to be able to finish my program at IC.
And it was the best thing possible for me, because I now get to have her as my retirement plan. So
I make them
perfect.
Yes.
But Heidelberg was interesting because it was professionally, it was an incredible opportunity for me, because I got there and I was running business development for a set of our solutions, more the financial type solutions. But I got to travel, I think maybe to about 22 countries, multiple times across Europe, Asia. And it really gave me a completely new worldview from a business perspective, and helped me understand people from so many different cultures. And I remember when we were leaving Ottawa, I was sitting having a drink with one of our friends who was Greek, who had moved from Greece to Canada. And I was saying, I'm really nervous about moving to Germany because I don't speak German, and he had actually lived in Germany. He had gone from Greece to Germany when he was 19 or 20 and lived there. He said, Roger, don't worry about it. You're the type of person that will be friendly with everybody. You'll make friends right away. You'll love Germany. Don't worry about it. And you go anywhere you go, you'll be okay. And
he was right.
And he was so right. And then I went all over Scandinavia, all through Southern Europe. I went to Africa, to South Africa, and people were the same everywhere, basically, right? And that was the thing, that when you're from a small town on a rock in the Atlantic, and that's where you grow up, everybody has been there. My family has been in that same general area since about 1700. So I've been in North America. My family's been in North America for a very long time, and I didn't know anywhere else. But now to have traveled so much and see so many people and realize that we're all at the core so much more alike than we are different, that blew my mind while I was there. And then on the non-professional side, I got to meet all these great people who didn't care if I was because by then we were in our early 30s. Some of these people were in their late 50s, somewhere we had Alan's 40th birthday. You were still in your late teens.
I was 19, 18, 19.
18, 19. So, I mean, we had this group of friends who were more alike than different, and they were all ages and all different backgrounds from a nationality. and it opened my mind so much. And then we partied a lot too, and we're very much like rock stars. But I think held down my really professional responsibility with also realizing that if I let my guard down a little bit, it wasn't going to ruin my career. And that was something it actually made me more interesting on the professional side, because I was a little less, as they say, buttoned up after Germany as well. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Very interesting that Germany, like as you said, let the button loose up a little bit.
No, it's opposite.
Like people say it's the other way around.
Everybody always says about Germany, if you really want to let go, move to Germany. Exactly, right? No?
Well, probably if you get into the same party scene. No.
Not all of Germany.
Not all of Germany, but we really got to meet some great people.
Yeah.
Again, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Don't assume that all Germans and all of Germany is the way that you learned about in all the stereotypes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And how did you you said you kept your guard up during this time. How did you do this, Roger? And Serena, how did you realize, even during let's call it a crazy time like this, how did you realize that you like it, but you still want to do something different? And can you explain this for others maybe? Huh?
Well, so the magical formula is to be able to hold both sides of your life in a way that doesn't make you have to give up the other, right? So I think one of the great things that we got out of Germany was that, when we were in Germany, I think we went a little crazy, a little too crazy. But after Germany, we realized that we needed quite a bit of crazy in our lives in order to then be able to be productive and happy in our professional lives. And I think we've kind of made that a way of life, right? So we play hard and we party hard, but we also work very hard.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be able to party hard and let go and explore that crazy side of you, your more normative side, in order to be able to be really effective at the expected aspects of your life, the responsibilities, the career, all the things. And I think we've managed to live a life that kind of managed to do a little bit of the expected and quite a bit of the unexpected melded together. And I don't think we could live in any other way.
Yeah, and I think maybe, I've always been really quite honest. So even when we were being somewhat crazy, I wasn't saying, oh, no, I was at church last night and I was there really late, so that's why no, it was, I was quite honest, and I also realized that as long as I could still be productive, then people didn't really judge me as much as I thought they might. Now, maybe it was a little bit different now in the last few years when I've been working with some of the people in the U.S. It's been there. I think there is a lot more of the judgmental side of what you do in your private time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
but you should qualify that though. So Roger's old company kind of re-centralized in a part of the United States that is particularly conservative.
Yeah, it didn't re-centralize, it's always been there.
Well, it used to be centralized. It used to have in Europe. They closed that down.
Yeah.
They brought everything back to the United States.
Yeah.
And they brought it to an area that is kind of in the Bible Belt. So a lot of his co-workers are, work really hard and then go to church and then have 5 kids, and everything has to be like that. And they're very judgmental towards others that don't really live their lives.
Some of them were really, really nice people too. So I just didn't feel like I could really be overly honest. They would see one colleague that was a colleague in common while we'd be having dinners, that would come to the bar and sit at the bar and have a couple of drinks every night on his way home. And like the entire group, all the conversation was around this individual, this guy, and why wasn't he home with his wife, and a lot of judgment. So, and I didn't like that. So,
and they were all miserable too.
Yeah. So anyway, So, I mean, I think that'll be one of the things. If in whatever I decide to do next, I'll try to do something which I feel it was a good company. So I'm not blaming the company, but that I can feel like the colleagues that I'll be working with are people that I can be really, and there were a lot of them that I could be honest with, but there were a lot that I couldn't be at this last company. And I guess maybe that'll be the case if I go back into that hyper responsible, hyper professional world.
When you consider all these things, and sometimes maybe you miss your motivation and doing further continuous things that you have to do on your list and have to go further, where do you take your motivation from? Do you have something that inspires you when you come to a point like this?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I can tell you that my life has been a series of fortunate accidents. I was never the kind of person that had a list of things to do in life and then felt that by 30 I would do this and by 40 I would do this. And I always felt that was way too strict, a way to imagine life. And I think that's really been positive for me. Really kind of just letting things organically happen and keep an open mind that things will work out. I think what's more important to me is that I have a core set of values, and whatever I choose to do, I don't cross or prevaricate over those values. So I try to make myself happy, right? I put that very much as a priority in my life. I come from a very conservative family that was very strict and really wanted to keep me under wraps and didn't want to let me go. And I kind of moved away when I was 20. So, I was the black sheep daughter for a few years, but that was okay because, at the end of the day, you have to make yourself happy first, and then everything else kind of falls into place.
And she's also the person who's been calling her parents every day through the...
I know, we're closer now that we're older, though. That's the way it goes, right? I mean, my mom was mad at me for a few years, but then she got over it, and now we're fine. The other thing is that I like to grow things, and I would like for everyone to be having their best lives. So I like to surround myself with positive thinking people that like to think outside the box, people that are not all worried about what other people think. And I think if I can continue to surround myself with like-minded people, everything's going to be fine. So I don't have so much an inspiration to follow or a goal that I want to reach next. I try to live my best life every day. And then everything else sort of kind of falls into place. That would be, I think, the best way to.
My motivation, Serena would say, when we met, and this was part of the reason she was a little bit concerned about getting it serious with me, was I used to wear a T-shirt that was Scrooge McDuck on the front. And do you know Scrooge McDuck?
No, we don't know.
Too young.
Oh, they're too young.
I'm going to find a picture.
Okay, so it's a Walt Disney character. It was the uncle of Donald Duck, and it was...
Dagobert. What's his name? Because we know it as Dagobert Duck. He's the rich guy in the...
The rich guy, that's the one.
Oh, we have a different name for this guy. Yeah.
How do you call him in English?
Scrooge McDuck.
Scroogey?
There he is.
Ah, yeah, Scrooge. That's he's called Dagobert in German. But the same. How do you call those three nephews of Donald Duck in English?
In Italian.
No. Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Yeah, and in Italian it's different too, and in German it's Tick, Trick, and Track. Trick, und Track.
The sound the ducks make. Yeah.
So anyway, back to Scrooge McDuck on the shirt.
Yeah, sorry.
She thought I wanted to make $1 million.
No, you said it to me.
Maybe I did. Maybe I said it.
He was 19 and he said to me, by the time I'm 25?
I don't know, by the time I'm 30, I want to make $1 million. And I was like, oh God, that guy, okay. I wasn't too impressed. Yeah, anyway, so it ended up that I definitely was going that way and buying into all of the idea when I was at the first accounting firm, especially. But I realized that the other people who thought that way, and some of them became millionaires by the time they were 30. They went off to the Caribbean and did things. One of them was a decent guy. The other one was a horrible guy who left his wife at the altar and a bunch of different things. But these guys were not the people that I was trying to be like. Weren't nice people, and I realized that. And I also realized that part wasn't making me happy. And as soon as I did that, and like I said, I did fairly well through my time. I kind of got there anyway, but I didn't have to sell my soul to get there, and that was really important. So now, when I'm thinking about everything, and even the way that I said I wasn't really myself all the time, but I was also somebody who would talk about politics with my colleagues who were very right wing, and when I was in North Carolina, and talk about things that I thought were important about social justice and things like that, partially because we talk about a lot of these things because of sociology and whatnot, but I have my own ideas that way, and I wasn't afraid to say that. Now, I think that will be my motivation going forward, is to always, like you said, live kind of a truthful, best life. Do golden rule: do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And I think that really is what makes you happy. And if at the same time you can end up being financially comfortable or in a good relationship and all these types of things, maybe it's not a coincidence, right? Maybe it's because you are a good person. And when
you're being a bit wishful thinking there.
No, because when I was let go from the company, I had this outpouring of people who really reached out to me and said how shocked they were and how nice a person and what a productive relationship had been. And that was worth so much to me. It definitely made the idea that the company made a decision easier to take by knowing that people appreciated me as a person. So if I had been a bad person and then had this happen to me, I don't know how I would deal with it personally. It would have been a hole.
No,
right?
for sure.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I remember my uncle in Australia. He always said his whole life. My grand uncle in Australia, he always said his whole life that he never left a job where they said like, "Ah, screw you, go away," or like, you know, like where they were like, he always tried to leave a job like. But like people talking about him in a good way, and it doesn't matter even if he hated the job, he still wanted it to be like this. And I think this is really important, to just end a chapter and start something new, because otherwise you're always running like like catch up with your past or whatever. So thank you very much. It's really, really nice words and very interesting and inspiring. So I think we get to our last couple of questions now. And like one of our questions we always ask our interview guests is, imagine you would be, because we are with unpopular people here, that's the name of our podcast and our show. So imagine you would be popular. So you would be well known in the whole world. You would have like a massive influence. There's so many people listening to you. You have like 1 trillion followers on Instagram. Most of them are fake. No, just joking.
I'd have to have an account.
No, but just imagine you have like a big influence. Like for example, for Serena, it would be like you would I don't know, publish a book. Everyone wants to know about sociology, and everyone's listening to it. What would be your message, or like whatever? Roger, you have your own company, and you have like so many people. Like you create a new Facebook or something. What would be your message to the people if you would have like this influence?
Yikes, this is a really hard question. What to do? Because I always joke with Roger that I need another 9 lives, because I want to do so many things and I have so many million interests that it's hard to pick. I think, okay, given the situation we find ourselves in, you know what I would love to be? Because this is like sci-fi, right? I can invent anything I want. Star Trek, the fundamental premise of Star Trek, the dream that the maker of Star Trek had, his name was Roddenberry, was to basically create this globalized world with an interconnected government that would resolve all the pressing issues, so disease, famine, precarity, education. So I would like, if I could be whoever I wanted, I would be probably the politician that makes that world order possible. That would be my absolute dream. I think if you think of someone that is doing similar things, though in a smaller field, Bill Gates has made all his billions of dollars, and now he's put that aside and he wants to try to resolve a bunch of health issues globally by putting his money at work and by creating all these global networks among scientists to share their knowledge so they can come up with HIV solutions, malaria solutions, sanitation solutions. So that's the kind of thing, if I really had the ability and the power, that's something I'd like to do. Yeah.
Shit.
Now I've
got to answer the same question.
I had the best answer.
You don't have to change anything. If you don't want to change anything, you don't have to.
No fucking pressure.
You can be Trump's assassin. I'm sorry. I say it out loud.
No, I'm not the man on the grassy knoll. I really do think about a lot of the ways that we could do things differently in business from the point of view of being much more altruistic and looking at ways that you can make money but also be altruistic. And I think I even wrote it down on a plane in my phone at one point. It was something like altruistic capitalism or something like that. So it's maybe a step off of what Serena is talking about from the point of view, but having kind of a secondary set of books that looks at how much good that company has done for the world, right? And docking it and taxing it if it's not doing good things for the world. And trying to figure out, and there was a movement around sustainability, talking about the triple bottom line and things like that, but it lost a lot of steam around things that now through activists like Greta and other things like that are starting to come back, and I think young people are going to make a big difference. But I think if you could really have that as kind of a guiding principle that would stop certain types of capitalism from happening because they aren't towards the greater good of the world, that would be something that I know it's a lofty goal. Right after I solve
world
hunger and figure out peace in the Middle East, I'll do this. But it's
I'm glad that we have come.
But I really do think that there's a way after this that governments are going to have a bigger role in what is right, and it's not all going to be about the financial generation. But you need to start looking after the weakest in the world, and I really worry about my friends in the U.S. And I'm very critical of Trump, but I think the biggest concern I have is that it is going to get much worse, and I hope that it doesn't get much worse there, because there is there and here in Canada a lot of income inequality, right? And that drives a lot of these big kind of social problems. And we've done it largely because people want to make as much as they possibly can. Back to Scrooge McDuck. What was it? Yeah.
Dagobert.
Dagobert. There you go.
That's a good name.
Yeah, thank you very much. So there's no right or wrong answer to this. So because it's just gathering ideas. That's why we asked this question. It's just because everyone says something different, you know. So it's just for us. It's just we get so many different ideas from so many angles, and so many different people tell us something different. So it's your answer was beautiful as it is, and we just thank you from my side.
Now we come to a question we always ask. It has to do with the education system. And imagine you would have a school and you could select the subjects. So this means there have no subject that exists. So something you want to teach children or young people what they have to learn in life. What subjects would you implement?
I get to go first this time.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm I think maybe a product of my time right now. But one of the things that I think is scariest is the level of the lack of capability we have around self-sustainability. And so the whole idea that a lot of kids really don't know how to grow vegetables or don't know how to do the things that would have been taught at one point in Canada in home economics, which was very sexist when it was done. So another thing is all the program would have to be completely without this whole idea that boys do one thing and girls do another thing. Everybody does exactly the same thing. All the boys learn how to cook. All the girls learn how to do carpentry and change a tire. And I think that is one of the things that I hope after all of this, we realize we've gotten a little bit too far away because of the modern supply chains and things like that, that you don't know where your food comes from. You don't know where things come from. And I think that's a big part of what needs to be in some kind of education and educational system for kids so that they understand that. And I know some schools do that, but I think we've moved too far away from that.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, thank you.
Mine? Okay.
She's probably got a longer answer.
No, it's not. It's not going to be long, actually, because it's something that I'm kind of cooking in my mind already. I think what we need is maybe not a school, but a course on happiness. And there's been some interesting things done in this area. You need to bring together a bunch of different expertises. You need a neuroscientist. You need somebody that works in health. You need a sociologist. You need somebody in arts, and you need somebody in history, and then somebody in philosophy. And basically what you would do is you would spend a bunch of time going to see happy people and figuring out what makes them happy and experiment with all sorts of varieties of happiness and then try to distill the lessons out of these people's lives. I think actually with your blog, you're trying to do exactly that. So it's really cool to see the convergence.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So I think the first important lesson I think we get out of this is that happiness comes in many versions and possibilities. Another is that sometimes we're unhappy because we have traumatic experiences that we can never know to deal with, and therefore we end up stuck in a rut. That's why it's so important to talk to somebody in health and neuroscience. And there's ways out, right? There's psychological techniques to kind of re-educate the way your mind works to make you get out of those modes. And the other one is that...
and it's kind of, again, saying that it's not money that's going to make you happy.
No, absolutely. I mean, people think that being... This is why I love so much the concept of your blog, right? You like this idea of unpopularity. Everyone assumes that we need to look at the superstars, or we need to look at the powerful people to figure out happiness. But that's so not true, right? It's actually, I think, very much the other way around. Yeah. So there, it's a short answer, but I think we should study happiness.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, if people want to find out more about you, is it okay if you want to share any way of contact, or do you want people, if they have any questions about sociology or about your project, should they contact us and we forward it to you?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We can give you an address.
I mean, we want to keep this. Let's see how it turns out, but. We may not even necessarily want our full names. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
So let's.
This was a pretty. I think it was a pretty.
Yeah, it was I think it'll be great. I think it'll be great.
I don't think there's any part of this that gives me any issues.
But yeah, we're not.
No worries.
Yeah, the other thing is, I don't know. It's I don't know if I want to email people.
Yeah.
Maybe not the email address.
Yeah.
The people can contact us via our website and send us a message, and we will forward it to you, and then you can decide.
Yeah.
And if there's any profile, you want people to follow on, we can add it to the show notes. You just tell us afterwards. Yeah. And
okay.
Cool. So thank you very much for your time. We
wonderful.
We wrapped this up so far. And we say from our side, we say goodbye now. And So
yeah, thank you very much. It was great inspiration, I think, for many people, because the motto of our podcast is listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success. And yeah,
Serena helped us with this phrase, to be honest.
yes. And yeah, it was like you learned a lot in this interview, and thank you very much for your time and all the inspirational words.
Awesome.
Oh, great.
Thank you for being a part of it.
Yes. And if you want to, you have some final words you want to say for our guests, now at the time.
Yes, travel as much as you can.
Yeah, after all this is better.
Wait for it to be safe and then travel.
Wait for it to be safe, but travel, meet people. God, I hope we can, but hug people, be really genuine, and you'll meet some of the most wonderful people. And sometimes it'll be in the strangest circumstances. So yeah, you just open yourself up to meeting great people.
The cat wants to say hi. Hello.
Hello, kid. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much for listening to this inspiring interview with Roger and Serena. We hope you enjoyed it.
For the show notes to this episode, have a look on our website www.unpopularpeople.com. It would help us a lot if you would share this episode with your friends and family. Thank you in advance, and bye-bye.
Goodbye.